Every year, Passover is a holiday of learning at home. We start the Seder with the 4 questions where the youngest kids do what is the most basic thing in education. And then we move on to reading a story about rabbis who spend the entire night so immersed in learning that their students have to come and say, Rabbis, it's time to go to synagogue. No year more than this year is this a holiday about being at home and learning together with our families. No more year more than this year is the family in the home so important in shaping who we are as Jews and who we are as a community. We at UJA feel so blessed to work with groups of rabbis and educators and day schools and supplementary schools and camps and synagogues who continue to educate us, who continue to inform us, who continue to shepherd us through these very narrow and difficult moments when our community has shifted so drastically. We're grateful to all of them for their leadership, and we're grateful to you for being part of this community and for continuing to carry forward the traditions that are so near and dear to us, even at these moments of narrowness and challenge. On behalf of all of UJA and our whole community, we wish you Chag Kasher v'Sameach. May your Seders be moments of family learning, discussion, rejuvenation, and talking. Chag Kasher v'Sameach.
Okay, my friends, I get the honor of speaking about one of my 14 favorite parts of the Seder. If you were to ask a friend, or I guess maybe this year yourself, what's the point of all this Pesach Seder stuff? In fact, for that matter, what's the point of all of Torah and mitzvahs, all of the commandments? You might think that we'd get many different answers around our tables, and that would be understandable. But sometimes the answer to the question is actually so subtly yet so clearly right in front of our nose. See, whenever we say a blessing, we all say the exact same words to open it up. Every blessing. Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, God, master, creator, founder of this project called the world. Asher kidishanu b'mitzvosav, who has sanctified us, elevated us, infused us with spiritual purpose through your commandments. See, the goal of the Seder is not simply to go through the Seder, but so that the Seder goes through us and elevates us through the process. One of the reasons why I love KADESH is that Kiddush is something we say not just on Pesach, but every single Shabbos. We're reminded, and we even say, Zecher liYetzias Mitzrayim. We say Kiddush to remember that we were taken out of Egypt. Why? Because when God came down and said, you know what, I'm taking you guys out of here. We're busting free. He said, why? Not just simply because I want you to be free. Not just because I want you to be another ordinary person, an ordinary nation, and an ordinary country, but because he saw in us the potential to be an extraordinary person, extraordinary nation, an extraordinary country, and through our Kedusha, through our extraordinariness, if that's even a word, and our elevated state of seeing this world for purpose, we would go ahead and elevate the entire world around us as well. So with that, I wish you a Chag Kasher v'Sameach, L'chaim, and I look forward to seeing you once we're all out of here.
URCHATZ is one of the most important parts of our Seder meal this year and every year, the hand washing. It's also the moment when our children are supposed to notice something is slightly different and start asking questions. Why are we washing our hands without saying the blessing? Why are we washing our hands before the KARPAS and not before the MATZAH, the main element of our meal, the bread? The Maharal of Prague explains that we wash our hands at this moment because we're setting our intention at the beginning of the Seder, just in the way that hands set our intentions upon the world or show our intentions by the way we act in the world. And so as we're beginning our Seder now with a moment of cleanliness, I hope that in addition to the 3 ritualistic pours of water on your right hand and 3 on your left hand, they'll also all stand up and go wash your hands in the sink as well with soap and water for 20 seconds and set that intention for this spring, that this spring will be for us a healthy spring and a spring full of cleanliness and blessing. Chag Pesach Sameach.
Let's talk about KARPAS, that funny little vegetable that we eat at the beginning of the Seder and we dip in salt water. Why do we do it? Well, the most basic answer is so that the children should ask. A strange practice that we only do the night of the Seder, dipping a vegetable in salt water that we normally wouldn't be doing, leads the children to ask, why do we dip twice on this night, both the KARPAS and our MAROR? But there are a lot of deeper explanations as well as to the significance of dipping a vegetable at the beginning of our food. The Talmud says that eating vegetables before you start your main meal is gorer. It draws your appetite. It's called an appetizer for the reason that vegetables in salt water make you hungrier. And the idea that's being conveyed is that we want to make a person hungry, spiritually hungry. Tell me more about this story. I want to get more involved in the story of the Haggadah. And we signify that on a physical plane by dipping something in salt water so that it creates curiosity and it also creates the physical hunger as well, so that we'll get more into this story.
Hi, I'm Yaakov Fruchter from Bet Tzedek Congregation in Toronto, and I'm here to tell you about the fourth step in the Passover Seder, which is called YACHATZ. We take the middle of the three matzahs, and we break it in half, and we take the larger piece, and we put it into a cloth, and we hide it, and we later eat it as a part of the afikoman in the tzafun step. And I have to say, I think that this YACHATZ moment, which really only takes about a minute, is really overshadowed by the rest of the Seder, and I want to tell you why. The reason we take this matzah and break it in half is actually to remind us of our brokenness, so that before we tell the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, of the Jewish people, of the children of Israel leaving Egypt, we actually try to consider our own brokenness, our own cracks, the ways in which we are not perfect. Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotsk taught that there is nothing as whole as a broken heart. And we want to examine what are the ways in which we are broken. As Leonard Cohen taught, there's a crack in everything, and that's where the light gets in. As we think about freedom, as we think about hope, we want to figure out, well, what are the ways that we're not perfect, and what are the ways that we can try to live a more whole and spiritually fulfilled life this year. And that's why we end up eating the afikoman, this broken piece of matzah, as our last taste in our mouth at the end of the Seder. We want to bring this brokenness with us throughout the year and work towards making our lives as whole and the world as whole as possible. Chag Sameach to you all. I hope that despite the physical isolation, that we can feel really spiritually connected to each other this year. Happy Passover.
Hi, I'm Rabbi Steve Wernick. I'm one of the rabbis at Bet Tzedek Congregation. It's a pleasure for me to have been invited to share some thoughts about the MAGGID section of the Haggadah as a supplement to your Seder. The MAGGID section is the central section of the Haggadah. It literally means the telling of the story. Our exodus from Egypt, Yetziat Mitzrayim, our exodus from that narrow place along the Nile to freedom. The MAGGID is told in 4 parts, and each part has the same structure. It begins with a question like Manishtana, why is this night different from all other nights? Certainly we know the answer to that this year. And then it has an answer. Traditionally that answer was Avadim Hayinu, we were slaves. And then following that answer, that section concludes with praise, Baruch HaMakom, blessed be God who is the place of the universe, the place of the world. As you tell the MAGGID this evening, it's important to think about the questions that we ask, the answers that we have, and the joy that can be found even in our isolation, our physical distancing from each other, but hopefully not our spiritual nearness to each other. It's also important to have a good Haggadah. This year, I bought the Passover Haggadah, an ancient story for modern times, brought to you by Tablet Magazine. In it, Daphne Merkin, American literary critic, writes, "We read aloud of our travails and of the dire punishments visited on our Egyptian oppressors by an all-powerful and vengeful God, with the intention of re-experiencing both the dread of oppression and the exhilaration of freedom." In contemporary terms, the Haggadah can be seen as both a trauma narrative, filled with the psychic repetition that trauma produces, and a story of redemption, shot through with joy and song. The section is titled The Seder as Therapy. And it's true, when we experience a trauma, we know that the more we can talk about that trauma, the more it helps us to process it and to cope with it and to find redemption. So as we sit for our Seders this evening, Manishtana, this evening, this Seder is very different. Tell your story. How is it different for you? What is it that gives you optimism and hope? And what praise can you offer to your family, to your friends, to your community, to the medical professionals in the world? Tell your story. Chag Sameach.
RACHTZAH is the second ritual washing of the Seder night. Due to changes in Jewish practice over the centuries and a desire to recreate what the Seders of old would have looked like, we have our first washing, but we don't recite a blessing. With the second washing, we do in fact recite a blessing, Al Netilat Yadayim. But then we do something which is quite strange for Jews. We're supposed to be quiet. We're supposed to wait until we have that first bite of bread or matzah before we begin speaking again. And the idea is that the washing of the hands is connected to the eating of the bread product. And we don't want to lose that connection, so we're quiet, or we might hum a little tune to keep us focused on what's to come. Many of us, all of us, are taking a pause in our own lives. We are being quiet. We are staying at home. We're not interacting. And the idea is we're focusing on the goodness to come. We're taking a pause in our lives for our own health and the health of our community. We should be blessed to continue to remind ourselves of what's to come, why we are keeping silent and quiet at home. We're doing this for everyone's sake. Chag Kasher v'Sameach.
Hello everyone, I'm Rabbi Elise Goldstein from City Shul in downtown Toronto, right now coming to you from my home office where I'm practicing Tikkun Olam by staying at home, and I hope all of you are as well. The Talmud in Brachot 35a teaches us the following: Asur lo la'adam sheyeheneh min ha'olam hazeh below bracha. One is forbidden to derive benefit from this world without first reciting a blessing. And yet, do we actually derive benefit from this hard piece of unleavened bread called matzah? What is its message to us so that we say a blessing over it? First, let's look at the blessing itself. HaMotzi lechem min haaretz, who brings forth bread from the earth. Now, does God actually bring forth bread from the earth? Isn't it wheat that grows from the earth? And isn't it the farmers who take that wheat and turn it into the bread that we enjoy and that we get benefit from? Every time I say HaMotzi lechem min haaretz, I think of the partnership between God, who causes the wheat to grow and the sun to shine and the rain to fall, and those farmers who cut the wheat and till the wheat and turn the wheat into flour. And then I think of the bakers who turn that flour into bread so that I can benefit from it. For me, HaMotzi lechem is about the partnership between the divine and the human. The divine source that flows and grows things from the earth, and the human labor and love that turns those things into things we can derive benefit from. And second, let's look at the bread we are blessing this Pesach. Interesting that although during the Seder we say a special blessing, al achilat matzah, over the matzah, for the rest of the time we simply say hamotzi lechem min haaretz over the matzah. So that is, it doesn't really have a special blessing. It is blessed as if it was regular bread. But it's not bread, it's not leavened, it's not challah, it's not a beautiful, tasty baguette. It's a simple bread, the bread of affliction, which, when eaten with the right kind of consciousness, or kavanah, it becomes the bread of our liberation. We say hamotzi, the regular blessing for bread, over this hardtack cracker, because the way we eat it turns our consciousness from slavery to freedom, eaten with the mindset of blessing. This matzah then deserves hamotzi lechem min haaretz. It gives us benefit worthy of blessing when we see it as the vehicle or the tool for which our mindset turns from affliction to blessing, from slavery to freedom. Now this Pesach we're going to be celebrating in a very different way. We'll have virtual seders, we'll have smaller than usual seders, we'll have different and maybe challenging seders. Some of us won't be with our extended family and the friends we've had seder with for years, and some of us may be alone. If we can turn our consciousness from what we can't do and what we can't have this year to what we do have and what we can do and what we will do, then the matzah, which on the one hand feels like the bread of affliction, but on the other hand is the bread of liberation, can transform us and our mindset from being slaves to this virus to being free people with choice. Chag Sameach. Have a wonderful Pesach.
Hi to the Jewish community of the GTA and Chag Sameach. The part of the Seder that I'm going to be reflecting on with you is the MAROR, the bitter herbs. I grew up, like perhaps many of you, with the custom of using horseradish for the bitter herb. Interestingly, if we go to the Mishnah, our oldest rabbinic text, 5 species are listed as being appropriate for use as the maror, none of which is horseradish. In fact, it appears that horseradish was not used for the bitter herb at the Seder until the 14th century in Germany. Of the species that are listed in the Mishnah, 1 is identifiable as lettuce. The other 4, it's not clear exactly what species they are referring to. When we think of lettuce, we don't think of it necessarily as being particularly bitter, certainly at least as compared to horseradish. But we do have to remember that our lettuce is the result of 2,000 years of cultivation to make it taste better. Lettuce in the time of the Mishnah was likely quite bitter. And that, of course, is the purpose. We eat maror at our seders in order to remember the bitterness of the experience of our ancestors in Egypt, the way the Egyptians bittered their lives by imposing hard labor upon them. But I want to share with you one other association with the word maror. The rabbis love to make plays on words. And of course, the word maror is from the Hebrew word mar, meaning bitter. But when the rabbis heard the word mar, they also thought of the word mor, which is the Hebrew word for myrrh, the spice. And when they thought of that word myrrh, they couldn't help think of Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, which is the scroll that we read on the Shabbat during Pesach. And they thought of the verse, Sror Hamor Dodi Li. My beloved to me is like a bag of myrrh lodged between my breasts. Myrrh, the spice, the rabbis taught, gives off its best fragrance when burnt. And so do human beings often rise to the occasion, achieving greatness under the bleakest of circumstances through their courage, their faith, and their kindness. Our ancestors in Egypt rose to the occasion at the time of the Exodus, following Moses and Miriam out when things were looking bleakest, and with God's help achieving their freedom. Many of us may be experiencing Pesach this year with some degree of bitterness. We're not able to be with the people we would like to be with, or celebrate the holiday in the way we'd like to celebrate it, because of the imperative to stay safe, to keep our distance, to be healthy, and to do our part to flatten that curve. My hope and prayer is that whatever bitterness we may be feeling because of the special circumstances and limitations of our Pesach this year may be transformed into sweetness, because we keep the faith that we will get through this, because we do feel God's loving presence among us no matter how we celebrate the holiday this year, and because of the acts of kindness and compassion that we practice. Chag Sameach.
This is Rabbi Yossi Saperman at Beth Torah Congregation and Living Jewishly. KORECH is the sandwich. It's about putting together the matzah and the maror, the bread of affliction, and the bitter herbs. And as Hillel used to say, they would have added in the Pesach, a bit of the lamb. If you think about it, maror, the bitter herbs, is sandwiched by matzah, which is the bread of affliction, reminding us of slavery and the impoverished state that we were in. And if you add in the Pesach sacrifice, while in the end it may have been part of the food and the meal of traditional Seder nights, originally the Pesach was a time of deep anxiety. They sat at their table waiting for Exodus. They had no idea what would happen to them, and they were afraid because they were locked into their homes. They were not allowed out of their homes at night. I know it sounds familiar. I've chosen to wear my shirt of affliction and my non-haircut of affliction because I'm stuck at home and I'm unable to get out and get my hair done, and I'm not really into wearing my fancy shirts. I want to remember these days. I want to remember the days that we were stuck at home doing the best we could with our family, when literally we became the sandwich, we became squeezed. Young children not at high risk, old people terrible risk, us in the middle, we're not sure how to be, how to act. What do we do? And the answer was stay home. So this year, when we eat the KORECH sandwich, let's remember, we're bundling up the anxiety of the pre-Exodus night. We're taking the bitterness. There's a lot of bitterness in life right now. We're taking the bread of affliction, the reminders of daily consequence of being unable to live our lives fully. We're putting it together. We add a little bit of charoset, which reminds us that it's our duty to try to sweeten even the darkest of moments. And God willing, we will see a return to normal life, to happiness, to health. And KORECH next year will have a slightly different meaning, but we will always remember the year that we were a bundle of challenge stuck together, and we ate it with the hope that next year will be a better time for all of us. So Chag Sameach, enjoy.
Are we there yet? When do we eat? Shulchan Orech, it's time to eat. Now, for most of us, this is the time that we wait for throughout the Seder, when we finally get to fill our tummies and enjoy all the great foods that we prepared and that we've been anticipating for our Seders. The Shulchan Orech, however, is an essential part of the Seder. It's not just when do we eat, but it's how we eat. And that we eat at the Seder the foods that would have been on the Mizbeach, that would have been on the altar. The Korban Pesach would have been eaten now. And our eating is meant to be with God, that we join together in this moment of redemption, recognizing that our eating is itself a form of Hallel, is a praise, in which we reflect upon all the bounty, all the goodness, all the things that we have to be thankful for in this moment. And as we sit at our Seders this year, we do so with lots of questions and with lots of things that might interrupt how it is that we sing and we feel the Hallel, the praise of this Seder. But it's worthwhile for us to remember that this is not the only time that the Seder has been eaten and has been participated with so many questions. And we have always enjoyed that Seder. And we have always said, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim. So as we sit for Shulchan Orech, may we do so with an appreciation that this is not just food, that this food itself is a form of Hallel, is a form of praise and thanksgiving, and it is especially meaningful on a year like this one. I'd like to extend to everyone blessings during this time. May you enjoy those who sit around your Seder table, those who are with you in these moments, and may you be brought together soon with those who are not. May we all witness redemption in this moment, and may we experience, God willing, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, to gather together as a people and as a world in Jerusalem next year.
As the Seder nears its conclusion, the matzah, which at the beginning of the Seder was a symbol for affliction and slavery, transforms into the bread of freedom and redemption. We eat that matzah at Tzafun as a memorial to the Passover sacrifice. Just like the Passover sacrifice was the last food you could partake of at the biblical Seder, so is the matzah eaten at Tzafun the last food item you can partake of at our Seders. Why must Tzafun end the meal? Well, actually, the reason is one that we can relate to. You see, it was the custom on all biblical holidays for the people to go out after enjoying their meal at their own homes to the homes of friends and neighbors where they would continue to eat and drink and enjoy. It was that practice that was forbidden on Passover. At our Seders, we experience what our ancestors experienced in Egypt. And on that night of the first Passover, the Israelites were not permitted to leave their homes, lest they be struck down in the plague of the firstborn. In memory of this, we conclude our Seder meals in our own homes, around our own tables, with the matzah eaten at Tzafun. Today, we have no choice but to conclude our Seders in our homes, but perhaps we can take some comfort knowing that in doing so, we're actually reenacting the circumstances of that very night all those centuries ago. In our own homes, we can still feel the shelter of God's love and protection.
Hello there, I'm Rabbi Denise Handlarski from Orenu Congregation for Humanistic Judaism, and I want to wish you a very, very happy Passover. Even though this year we are doing Passover under strange circumstances and lots of us miss our families, I really hope we take the opportunity of the holiday to consider gratitude. So right now I'm grateful to be sitting outside on a beautiful sunny day, even if I can't connect with all of the people I might like to. We are lucky to have spring weather upon us, and Passover is a spring holiday. And the part of the Seder I want to talk to you about is the BARECH, the part after we eat our beautiful Passover meal where we give thanks. And whatever Haggadah you're using, and there are plenty of Haggadah options out there, I suggest going to haggadot.com if you want to look up a plethora of options and even maybe create your own. But whatever Haggadah you're following, we'll have a section after the meal where you stop and give thanks. In my community, we don't do the traditional prayers that one might find in a traditional Haggadah, but we do talk a lot about gratitude. And so we might be feeling like this is a difficult year for Passover, and focusing on gratitude can really help. So in Judaism, we are told to eat, be satisfied, and be grateful or give thanks. And so I want that for you at your Seder. I want you to eat delicious, healthy foods that make you feel good and feel nourished. I want you to feel satisfied, and I want you to be grateful. Be grateful for those who create and grow the food, especially in tough circumstances. Grateful to grocery store workers keeping our stores going. Grateful to the people we get to enjoy a meal with, even if it's online, and grateful for the abundance that many of us get to enjoy in our own lives. Happy Passover.
Shalom. My name is Rabbi David Seed. I'm one of the rabbis at Adath Israel Congregation and also the president of the Toronto Board of Rabbis. I want to thank UJA Federation for giving me this opportunity to share some thoughts with you about the Hallel portion of the Seder night ritual. The word Hallel means praise. We all know the word Hallelujah, which means praise be God. But why is it that we recite Hallel at the Seder night? As you know, we recite Hallel throughout the year. We do so on Rosh Chodesh, at Pesach, Sukkot, and Shavuot. But it's most associated with Pesach. And the reason is for the verses in chapter 15, beginning with verse 16. It says, "Terror and dread descend upon them. Through the night of your arm they are still as stone. Till your people cross over, O Lord, till your people cross whom you have ransomed. You will bring them and place them in your own mountain, the place you made to dwell in, O Lord, the sanctuary, O Lord, which your hands establish. The Lord will reign. forever and ever. So this connection between crossing over the Red Sea to the wilderness and eventually the land of Israel and Jerusalem, where the people would eventually be established, that's the connection. That's the reason that we recite Hallel during the Seder service itself. There are 6 psalms that are part of Hallel. The first 2 talk about the actual crossing, and the next 4 talk about the experience of leaving Egypt and now being able to thank God for having been made a free people. But the question that I know is on everybody's mind, myself included, is how can we praise God? How can we be thankful at this time? I know that many of you, myself included, have smaller seders. Not all of our family are there with us. Sometimes it might be ourselves or a spouse or just the immediate family, not the large seders with family and friends that we're used to. So how is it that we this year, more than at any other, can recite these words of praise, of thanks to God? For what we have to be thankful. We know what we are missing. So how can we be thankful? My friends, I believe that in spite of what we are missing, the task that we have in front of ourselves is to look within and to discuss with each other what it is that we can be thankful for. We are, for example, part of a long tradition, and we are continuing that tradition today as free people, not as slaves. We hope, our health and those of our family. We are here to be able to connect with the land of Israel, even though this is a difficult time for them as well. We are there together with them as they are with us. And I think for all these reasons and so many more, we should look and find the little bit of praise so that we can try to express the thanks. It's always important to do so, even more so at this time, on this day, at this challenging time of our lives. Nevertheless, I hope that you will take the opportunity to find some thoughts of praise, particularly at this part of the Seder service, that we should be blessed next year to be celebrated with one another and with friends and family. Chag Kasher V'Sameach, happy Passover.
Hi, it's Rabbi Walker coming to you, and we're going to talk a little bit about NIRTZAH, the last section of the Seder. Super exciting. I know when I get to this point in the Seder, it's always a little bit bittersweet because I'm so excited that we finally made it. We did it, and oh my gosh, wow, and also a little sad that I might have to wait a whole nother year, especially if I'm doing 2 Seders, the second night Seder. I have to wait a whole nother year to get to do it again. So we're juggling both of those truths as we enter into NIRTZAH. And one piece that I really love about the end of the Seder, and some places, some Haggadot, it might be in NIRTZAH, some it's in Hallel, but are all the extra songs at the end. Especially my favorite is Chad Gadya, one about an only goat. And I love it because I love making the animal noises. And this isn't just for kids, this is for everyone. I love really embracing my inner goat and, doing some bah, right? Have fun. Passover is about being free. So for me, being free is really being goofy. And so I like to do that through some of these songs at the end. And the last line, the last thing we say in NIRTZAH is V'shana haba'a b'Yerushalayim. This idea of may we next year be able to have our Seder in Jerusalem. And I think this is a metaphor, right? Not necessarily Jerusalem the place, although if you want to go, it's great. Highly recommend it. But Jerusalem represents this age, this time in the future where we'll have peace, where things will be perfect in some ways, in many ways. And when we end on this note of hope, I think it's really helpful for all of us to end on this high note, on this note of hope, on this note of looking to the future and knowing that the future is going to be better. And it also calls us to think about how we can help and work together to make that future a reality. And so it's not just a prayer and a hope, but also we're called to take action. And, there you go. Happy Passover. Chag Sameach.
During this really challenging time, it's more important than ever that we stay connected to our traditions, to our roots, and to our community. On behalf of UJA, I just want to thank the rabbinic leaders who took the time to put together these incredible resources for us for Pesach. Happy Passover from us to you. Chag Sameach. Please stay safe, stay home, stay healthy, and if there's anything at all that UJA can do to help you, please don't hesitate to reach out.